Hey, I'm Liz Loza, and this is Facts versus Feelings, the amuse-bouche to your fantasy focus main course. We are delivering more fantasy, more facts, more feelings, and of course, more fun. And now that I have your attention, today's fact is that rules aren't real. It wouldn't be an episode of Facts versus Feelings without producer Presley. Dave, thank you so much for coming back.
Oh, thanks for having me back, Liz. I am excited. Biggest draft weekend of the year. Let's do it.
Yeah. Most importantly, though, which rules do you most enjoy breaking?
Ooh, I broke a lot of rules in my early 20s, but mum's the word on that because I think I'd be unemployed tomorrow if I said any of that.
Do you think HR is watching?
They're always watching.
They're always watching. Okay, speaking of watching, before we get into things, don't forget to like and subscribe to this video that you are watching. You know you want to, and unlike your ex, will actually show up. I mean, thinking about breaking things. I probably shouldn't have said that. Anyway, also, this season, you can leave us a voicemail, which is probably something your ex did a bunch of as well. Hit us with your questions at 914-348-8. Nope. Okay.
Nailing this.
This
914-348-1893.
1893.
Let's hit the disclaimer.
Phew.
Fantasy football is a game of inches, luck, and irrational confidence. Proceed with caution. Trust your gut. And remember, ADP is a suggestion, not a command. Mock drafts are fantasy. Your real draft is war. And just because you heard it on this show doesn't mean you should do it. If all goes wrong, just say your account was hacked.
Today we're talking about 3 guys that make you want to break the rules, Liz. And the first one on this list is a pretty boring pick. I'm not going to lie. It's Tony Pollard.
So that's the assumption about Pollard and why I am willing to bend the rules, because it's not real. Tony Pollard is actually quite exciting, especially at his current ADP. Now, you know that I have been extolling the virtues of Pollard since the beginning of the summer because of the value he was presenting. It seems as though that with Tajay Spears now on IR, the rest of the fantasy community is catching on just in time to jack up that ADP, but I'm still comfortable with it. And that is because last year when Spears missed time, Pollard got all of the touches. He had 7 games of 22 or more touches last year. Now you might be thinking, wow, that's really high volume, and yet he only had 5 rushing touchdowns. I would like to suggest that was because the Titans offense, a team of which you are a fan, Dave, struggled so horribly that they could never get in scoring position. I don't think that's going to be the case this season with Cam Ward under center. And so I am expecting a leap forward for the offense, and I am expecting an incredible amount of volume for Pollard. And where he is going, to me, seems like a great opportunity. So he may not be flashy, but that's fine. Let other players reach for flash. I will take this floor option. He's a solid RB2.
All right, second player on this list, Liz, Drake London. Michael Penix behind center, and we did not see a lot of him last year. So what's your take on this one?
Dave, we didn't need to see Michael Penix because Drake London posted monster numbers with the carcass of Kirk Cousins throwing him the ball. He averaged an incredibly efficient 2.45 yards per route run. He also dominated in the red area with 25 red zone looks. He managed 100 grabs, over 1,200 receiving yards, and 9 touchdowns. This is a contested catch specialist who only has 8 drops over his entire career. The talent is so big, and this is the best part. Yes, there was a limited sample size with Penix under center, but over those 3 games in which Penix and London were vibing, Penix drew 40 targets, 352 receiving yards, and 23.1 fantasy points per game. There is a large chance that London can at the very least replicate his stats from last year, if not best them, in 2025 with Penix as the full-time starter.
I like that take, Liz, and we love good vibes on this show, but a player that's not been giving me good vibes is next on this list. Last season, Xavier Legette. I don't know about this one. What have you got?
Why have you not been getting good vibes from Legette? Have you ever seen an interview? He's wildly entertaining.
Legette's entertaining, but his quarterback is not, and he's on my dynasty team. It's Bryce Young.
Actually, when Bryce Young came back as the full-time starter last year, he was much more consistent, which is why, frankly, so many drafters are willing to select Teteroa McMillan, the team's presumed wide receiver 1. But if they miss out on T-Mac, I think Leggett is a really interesting late round flyer. He's not someone that you're going to build a team around by any means, but this is a player with first round draft pedigree and 94th percentile speed. He also did flash over the course of his rookie season last year, and this is the biggest part, with Adam Thielen now officially off the squad, he will have a boatload of targets, probably upwards of 90 looks. So if you are just wanting to find some depth in the 15th round, go ahead and take a flyer on Leggett, who has the talent and now potentially the volume to surprise.
I like it. Breaking the rules.
You don't
rules
have to
broken.
like it. You don't have to like it, Dave. You can say like that is a take, I don't like it. But if we're talking about players that are like bucking trends and breaking rules, I think Leggett is just interesting. Just like something to entertain, because again, when you're in that late in a draft, why not find some upside and just, go for it? Because if you're not winning, you're gonna be losing, right? Isn't that how it goes? If you're not first, you're last?
Something like that.
No? Okay. Fine.
Round hole, square peg,
And there you have it, your permission slip to ignore the so-called fantasy rules. Just forget the noise, because when the season kicks off, the only voice that matters is yours. Of course, it helps to know the rules before you break them. Our next guest literally wrote an entire draft guide. JJ Zachariason joins us after the break. Hello?
Hey, Liz, it's JJ.
Hey, JJ, author of the Late Round Quarterback and host of the Late Round Fantasy Football podcast. Hi, how are you?
I'm good. I'm ready to talk some ball.
Let's do it. You have a draft guide that's out right now. It's quite popular. What do you think the biggest mistake drafters make every season is, per your guide and your personal opinion?
Yeah, I mean, I'd probably dumb it down to drafters don't play to win. Like they fail to embrace uncertainty. That's always the phrase that I go with. Like you got to embrace uncertainty when you're drafting. What I mean by that is, people will look at like a backfield split and they'll say, oh, I got to avoid this backfield because there's a backfield split. Like I don't want anyone from Jacksonville because we don't know who the bell cow and who the workhorse is going to be. Or, I don't want to get this rookie because rookies are unknown and I'd rather get a known commodity, in my draft as opposed to going that route. But every ounce of research that I've done because I do a lot of research that looks at average draft position and sees what are the things that drafters seem to overrate and underrate. And every ounce of research says that you should be embracing those situations. I've dubbed them ambiguous backfields, right? They're these backfields where we don't know who the guy is, but oftentimes that's where the biggest winners in fantasy football come from is these backfields where we think there isn't a go-to and a workhorse, but there ends up being that player, whether it's through injury or just through that player, beating out the other guys. So I would argue that you should be attacking the Jacksonville backfield. You should be attacking the Giants backfield, the Washington backfield, whatever it may be, because those prices for those players are lower, right? Like that's the benefit in doing so. And the same thing with rookies. When people are just like really not into rookies, that means that their costs lower. And so then you can go after those guys, and they're usually the ones who outpace ADP best.
So you mentioned, I love this, by the way, and I think you're right, that being courageous enough to walk into the running back wilderness, if you will. We say quarterback wilderness, right? But like willing to walk into a backfield wilderness and take a shot, especially in like the double digit rounds, can pay dividends. You mentioned Washington, you mentioned New York, and you mentioned Jacksonville. I am curious about your thoughts in Dallas, because that is another one of those muddy backfields. Well, I don't know if people think it's muddy so much as washed, but there is an opportunity there. So what are your thoughts on the Cowboys backfield?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, like Javonte Williams, is going to get first crack. And I think he's got the highest like floor, and he's like the best projected running back. But again, I think that when you're in those like double digit rounds and you're starting to inch towards like just dart throw territory, I'm going to go for upside. I'm going to go for the player who I think could be electric out of the backfield, could be a difference making type player. I don't know if Javonte Williams has that in him anymore after watching the last couple of years, basically since that knee injury. So Jaden Blue has been my dude. He's someone who
that's your target.
I have a prospect model, the ZAP model, very appropriately named the Zachariason adjusted prospect model. And the ZAP model liked Jaden Blue quite a bit because his receiving profile was just so strong coming out of Texas. And he also, he's a little bit undersized, which is a little bit of a concern in terms of him like hitting like a true like 180, 190 kind of rush attempt season. But I do think that we could see him, and I'm not comping him to this player, but I do think that Dallas could realistically use him in like a Jahmyr Gibbsy type role like we saw year one from them, or even like a early career Tony Pollard type role, right? Where we see him maybe inch towards that like 10, 11% target share, maybe not get a ton of work on the ground, but we know that receiving is just so important at running back, and especially in PPR formats. And so I'm gonna lean towards Jaden Blue. You know, if you go with like a hero RB or a zero RB approach, I can understand getting Javonte just to kind of get some production early on, but wouldn't surprise me at all if as the season goes on, Blue's, athleticism, his explosiveness is just kind of undeniable.
And the freshness of those legs, obviously, as well.
Right.
So what does the ZAP model say about the Giants backfield, particularly because Cam Skattebo and Tyrone Tracy are going back to back in ADP?
Yeah, it's interesting. Like the model liked Cam Skattebo quite a bit just because his production profile was so strong, and it's based on analytics and production and all that kind of stuff. The one downside for him was that he didn't test as a great athlete. Like he's not necessarily someone that had like an awesome speed score, which is weight adjusted 40 time and stuff. He did get some decent comps though. Like Kareem Hunt was one of the comps for Skattebo, which is pretty attractive. My thing though is that if you look at ADP trends for like redraft, one of the things that we should all be targeting and going after are in those middle rounds, not just these ambiguous backfields, but second-year running backs who have pass-catching chops, and that is Tyrone Tracy. Like, that's him to a T. I mean, he's a converted wide receiver. He kind of struggled a little bit as a pass catcher last year, but I think it's at least in his arsenal. And so I've been going after Tyrone Tracy a little bit more, made it easier to do that with the Skattebo injury. But yeah, I mean, I like both of these guys, which makes it kind of difficult, to go all in on one of them. But if I were to choose one, it would be Tracy over Skattebo.
I think it's interesting because it's weird that Skattebo was a player that so many drafters are willing to walk into the wilderness with and for and shy away from Tracy. So I feel like this is the inverse of the quote mistake that you were talking about. Like some players just catch fire. Also, Skattebo's just so fun to like watch, right?
Yeah, he's fun.
And so players like that catch fire, but maybe not everyone is taking into account the entire ecosystem with which these players are playing. I want to ask now, we're talking about mistakes and rules, and there seem to be all of these quote rules, but as you are explaining, rules don't really exist. They're here to be broken. So what is the quote rule that you encourage drafters to eschew on a regular basis?
Yeah, look, this might be a little controversial, what I'm about to say, because it's been something that we've been doing in fantasy football since fantasy football started. But I think that it's a bad idea to draft handcuffs for your
agreed.
running back.
Go ahead and preach. Tell them exactly why.
Yeah. So look, there are some instances where you might want to do it. If you are in a league where you feel really good about your roster and you draft Kenneth Walker and you really want like Zach Charbonnet or something like
that is the one. Yes.
Yeah. Like where the injury is already there. And I get all of that, but here are the reasons to not draft handcuffs. There's a difference between drafting too versus picking them up as the season goes on where they're going to be on the waiver wire. But the first thing is you're going to be using a bench spot on an asset that's just taking zeros at beginning parts of the season when the waiver wire is hectic and we're kind of learning the landscape of the season. And so I don't really want to do that. I'd rather just have a high upside player who could just be good on his own without an injury. They're often one of the first players that gets dropped. So again, you're going to draft a Taj Brooks or something who I like as a player, but he has no standalone value more than likely unless Chase Brown gets hurt. And if Chase Brown's not hurt the first 3 or 4 weeks of the season, Taj Brooks, once bye weeks hit and stuff, you're going to be dropping him. He's going to hit your waiver wire, which means someone like me or you or whomever who isn't drafting these handcuffs, later on in the season, you could then just go pick them up. Like they're going to be on the waiver wire much more than they get drafted. Oftentimes we don't get the handcuff right. We think we know what these backfields look like, but we just don't. I mean, again, there's some instances where, of course, Zach Charbonnet is the backup to Kenneth Walker and would be, a bell cow if he were to get injured. But we generally don't know who the handcuffs are going to end up being. And then the last point, I think, goes back to what I said at the start, where people don't play to win and drafters don't play to win. It's much more of a floor play than it is a ceiling play, right? You're doing this from an insurance perspective. Like you're saying, I'm getting Taj Brooks because I have Chase Brown. But in my opinion, if you're going to go that route, if you're going to get a backup running back, do it with a running back that's not on your team, because then
Exactly.
if that running back goes down, your team is a monster, right? You're about to just destroy everybody because now you have an extra usable running back. Now, the argument obviously on the reverse side would be, okay, but then if I have Chase Brown and he goes down and I don't have Taj Brooks, then I'm out of luck. And it's like, yeah, I get it, but that's kind of what you have to do in fantasy football, because if you're not first, you're last, you know?
Well, because exactly. One is a scarcity model, right? You're moving from a place of scarcity. And the other is you're moving from a place of being aggressive, right? You're strategizing that if you have Jordan Mason and somebody else is playing a zero RB strategy or a late round RB strategy, and they're picking up a floor player like Jones and then also trying to insure him with Jordan Mason, that's a whole lot of space. But you have so much more potential capital at your avail if you're diversifying your portfolio. I don't want to sound like a stonks guy, but that's basically what you want to do. And I never want to move from a place of scarcity, frankly, in my life, or also in my hobby, especially. So I love that you're bringing up that point as like the bold print at the end of the soliloquy, because to me it is the most important. Let's talk about, obviously the name of the show is Facts versus Feelings, and you are wonderfully analytically minded. You talked about Zap and you talked about strategies and all of these things, you height, weight, speed, spark, all the things. But I know that you have a heart. I know that you are an East Coast dad. I know that there are feels inside of you. Who is a player that is like maybe stirring something up inside of JJ Zachariason?
Yeah, I mean, probably Emeka Egbuka would be my
Yes!
my go-to here.
Daddy, I love him. Tell them, yes.
Yeah, you know, I just seems like everything's falling. It's just falling into place for him at this point, right? Yeah. You get the Chris Godwin stuff, which is still pretty ominous. I know that he's not on PUP, but it just still feels kind of weird that he hasn't even been like jogging very frequently, like, on practice fields and stuff. And I feel a little bit nervous about that. Jalen McMillan now is likely not going to play until, I mean, if he plays this year, until later in the season after that brutal, neck injury that he had.
Neck injury, yeah.
And then Cade Otton's hurt now too. I mean, I don't know how bad it's going to be, but like there's just another pass catcher in this offense that we're seeing that Emeka Egbuka doesn't have to deal with. He was a really good prospect in that Zap model, really versatile. That's something that the model looks at, is someone who can line up all over the field, someone who took work on the ground too. He wasn't just only a pass catcher, and obviously is is coming from a system in a school that has produced unbelievable talent at Ohio State, and he was playing amongst those players and still getting pretty strong production. You know, I think a lot of people sort of typecasted Emeka Egbuka as being a slot-only player coming out of college, and that he would only be able to play that kind of role. I think because
so many of the comps, like he was so productive in the slot, but also he comped to JSN so frequently that I think people just copied and plugged and played that same analysis of him.
Yeah, and like Robert Woods was another pretty common. That was actually one of his analytical comps too. And yes, like he can play the slot for sure, but he was also like fourth best in yards per route run in this class on the perimeter. He and of all teams for him to go to, it's kind of intriguing that he went to Tampa Bay, because last year Tampa Bay drafted Jalen McMillan, who was a pure slot in college, and they did not use him in the slot at all as a rookie. I think that Tampa Bay is just like, give me good pass catchers. If he's talented, I just want him, and we'll figure it out from there. And they're doing that with Egbuka. Everything's been moving in the right direction. Loved him as a prospect. Like the model didn't see him as that much worse than like Teteroa McMillan. Like that's how favorable things looked analytically for him. So I'm very, very, I'm feeling very good about Egbuka right now.
You're bullish.
Very bullish, yes.
Very bullish, to use the parlance. Last question before we play a little game. What is your biggest fantasy hot take for the 2025 season?
I'm going to go with Tucker Kraft finishes as a top 5 tight end in fantasy.
I have not heard that one. Okay, explain.
Yeah, so look, last year he was a yak machine. His yak per reception was 9.3, which was the second best that we've seen from a tight end since 2011. The only other tight end that's gotten to that point was George Kittle, though. You know, sometimes when these metrics are bound to regress, they can still tell us a decent story. And with Tucker Kraft, that story is, if you look at other players who have been at just 7.5 yards after the catch per reception, he was at 9.3 last year. You just get hit after hit after hit. It's like David Njoku, Dallas Goedert, George Kittle, Evan Ingram, Rob Gronkowski, Travis Kelce. I mean, it's just good player after good player. And generally speaking, what we want in breakout tight ends is obviously athleticism, which I think, he's proven that he has that. but also you want a path to this player being a top 2 target getter on the team. And I love Matthew Golden. I think that he's a good pick and redraft. Jaden Reed, though, is banged up. He's got this Jones fracture that he's dealing with. Romeo Dobbs is fine, but he's not like a special, obvious target earner. And so realistically, I think Tucker Kraft could be a top 2 target getter on that team. And then you match that with his athleticism. And honestly, the tight end position is kind of a question mark outside the top 3 anyway. So, it's a little bit easier for me to say that he'd be top 5 just because of that. So I think that it is in his range of outcomes to finish that high.
All right, JJ, do you want to play a game?
Let's play a game. Let's do it.
All right. We're going to play a game called Smash or Pass. Producer Presley is going to come on, mention a player, and then we will say whether we are smashing on that player or passing. Understood?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. Number 1, Devon Achane.
Pass.
Oh man, the injury's tough. I'm going to say smash.
Yeah.
But the injury makes it really tough though.
For me, it's the injury, specifically the calf strain, noting his skill set, which speed is the largest piece of, right? So if I am wanting an RB1, I just don't trust it, and I'd rather adjust my strategy. So right now, a week before the season, I'm passing.
Yeah, it's fair.
Smash or pass, Terry McLaurin.
Smash.
I'm passing on McLaurin.
Okay, tell me.
I'm worried about, the
regression?
ramp up. Yeah, there's the regression with the touchdowns. Like last year, he had over 40% of the passing touchdowns for them. And the only guys who have done that consistently since 2011 have been like DeAndre Hopkins, Devontae Adams, like pure touchdown scorers. And then, Washington, I love them obviously as an offense, but I think there's this assumption that they can only get better, but they were already a really good offense.
Hitting a ceiling.
Yeah, so I just worry about him being able to maintain the touchdowns.
I think there might be a little bit of a dip in his ADP, and so I'm willing to smash, assuming there's a discount.
Yeah.
Olives in martinis.
Smash times 3.
Ooh, I'm the complete opposite of Liz everywhere. I'm passing here. I'm passing.
Oh, you don't like olives, or you don't like martinis?
I hate olives, and I'm okay with martinis. I hate olives.
What do you put on your pizza?
A lot of other banana peppers are probably my go-to.
Oh, I like banana peppers. We can agree on that. I like, especially on a sub. Anyway, next.
Olives on pizza are gross. Next, Xavier Worthy.
Smash.
At his ADP right now, probably smash. I'm in the middle though. It's not really either way.
It's the ADP mixed with the definitive 6-week suspension for Rice, right?
Right. Exactly. Yeah. I mean, it's weird. Like when we learned about the suspension that it was going to happen this year with Rashee Rice, Xavier Worthy's ADP didn't shift.
It didn't move. Yes.
That's the reason why I went from I'm scared of Worthy to no, I'm going to probably just be drafting him.
Value conversation. Agreed.
Yeah.
Alrighty, DeAndre Swift.
At value smash.
Oh man, this is another in the middle one. I'll agree with Liz there. I'll just go with Liz there because the pass catching. I think it should be there at least.
All right, this one's spicy. Wrapping your meat on the grill.
I don't eat red meat or pork, so I think it's lazy. I am anti-wrapping your meat. You should not be lazy and use the tin foil. You should do it the real man way.
Yeah, I'm passing. You gotta get those nice grill marks. You gotta.
Yeah.
You gotta make sure
Okay.
Alrighty, Alvin Kamara.
I feel like I've gone first every time, so I gotta let JJ to go first on this one.
I'll say a very hesitant smash.
A delicate smash.
A delicate smash. That's right.
Yeah, we're just gonna snuggle. That's it.
Right. A little cuddle.
And finally, cargo shorts.
Oh, pass. Wait, hold on. I thought about this. I normally would say pass. However, I don't want to go out in the world carrying all of my things. But if I am with someone who happens to be wearing cargo shorts, then my sunglasses, my lip gloss, my phone can all be off of my person and on someone else's. So for the sake of utility, smash.
Look, I'm a dad, and I'm still saying pass. I'm still saying pass in the cargo shorts. I'm still there. I mean, maybe middle school and high school JJ would have said smash, but I am absolutely passing on the cargo shorts.
I appreciate your commitment to the cool and admitting that you're a dad. Good for you, JJ.
Okay. And that was a game of Smash or Pass. Thanks for playing.
That was it, JJ. Thanks so much for coming along. Can you please tell everybody where to find your work, not just obviously during draft season, but throughout the entire regular season as well?
Yeah, I got the Late Round Fantasy Football Podcast. You can find that anywhere you get your podcasts. And all my work is over on lateround.com.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, JJ. Good luck this season and talk to you soon.
Thanks. You too.
We've got a new segment where we're calling people out. No more tiptoe. And y'all are getting all the sauce.
I want the truth! You can't handle the truth!
So last week, I went to the Bahamas. I know, cry me a river. And I was asked by one of our lovely social media people at ESPN to give my Saquon Barkley take. I have given it here on this platform, and I simply said that while Saquon Barkley is undeniably one of one, and what he did in 2024 was absolutely historic, he also, and we have to acknowledge, touched the ball a historic number of times, 484 total touches, including the postseason. I also added that I personally dove into the numbers, a decade's worth of numbers, and that every single running back who had exceeded 300 carries and 20 receptions suffered a regression in yards per carry, yards per touch, and fantasy points per game, and that therefore I would not expect Barkley to match and certainly not exceed his 2024 production in 2025. Instead, if I'm going to play to win, and I am going to be bold, and I am going to bend rules, I would rather take a shot on Ashton Genty, who has the freshest legs and the highest projected volume of any running back going in the first round. Well, you would have thought that I said that Saquon Barkley was going to bust. In fact, I said he may not bust, but he will regress. And everybody got up in their feelings, got up in my comments. That's fine. Y'all have your takes, but I guarantee if I hadn't said something which was evidentiarily based, if I hadn't said something that was a little bit different, y'all would have said, she doesn't say anything. Her takes are all flat. She just says the same thing over and over again. Now, is Ashton Genty a known quantity? No, but are we playing to win or are we playing to be safe? You just heard JJ say that if you're not first, then you're last. So go ahead and bend some rules, and then don't come at me because you only need validation. You don't like the take. That's fine. You don't have to like the take, but you cannot call it a bad take until January of 2026. That is all the sauce.
Last call.
Today we learned that HR is always watching. Hi. That cargo shorts provide utility and that rules are meant to be broken. Remember, you have to have the courage to trust the facts you have researched and the feelings that they evoke, because that amalgamation of assets is way more real than any imagined rule. Big thanks to JJ Zachariason for joining the show and playing along, and as always to producer Dave for keeping me honest. Be sure to check out my pre-season edition of Facts versus Feelings, The Column, which just went live on the .com. And remember, you can leave us a voicemail. This is exciting. Hit us up at 914-348-1893. Until next time, may your facts be solid, your feelings be right, and your bus be someone else's problem.